She came to with her back pressed into frozen dirt, wrists aflame, lips torn and swollen. The air carried the stink of hay, sweat, and fear that had nowhere left to run. Sadie Rowe didn't cry out. Screaming had betrayed her once before, and the barn learned her quiet first. What the rancher did to her in that barn was worse than anyone could imagine, and the cruelest piece of it was this. Whoever did it slept easy afterward, then walked away as if time itself would scrub the stain clean. Not because of blood on the floor, but because someone decided she could vanish without noise. She lay on her side where thin light slipped through cracked boards, dust drifting like it was watching. Her ankles were tied. Her hands had gone numb. Her mouth tasted of iron and stale water. Every breath felt borrowed. The barn wasn't loud. It didn't echo with shouting or chaos. It was worse. It was still deliberate and waiting. Sadie tried to count how long she'd been there. Hours maybe. Days maybe. Fear stretches time until it snaps. Her last clear memory was boots on planks. Not hurried, not angry. Certain. Someone had weighed her value and left her like a task already crossed off. The desert did what it always did. It watched and kept its mouth shut. Miles from town, a man named Hank Mercer rode in beneath a sky baked pale and merciless. He'd bought the place for next to nothing. 30 acres of quiet, a house that leaned like it had surrendered, and a barn that stood crooked but stubborn. Hank hadn't come looking for hope. He'd come for quiet. The war had taught him how deafening quiet could be, but he figured he could bear it. He'd buried his wife using money from the last cattle he owned. No crowd, no words, just a box lowered into earth and the sound of his own lungs working. When he dismounted, the wind sliced across the yard like a warning meant for him alone. His boots crunched gravel. The horse snorted, uneasy, shifting its weight. That was when Hank felt it. Something was off. Animals sense trouble before men do. He moved toward the barn with his hand near his knife, not out of fear, out of habit. The doors groaned open like something exhaling inside, shadows stretched. Dust floated slow. The smell struck first. Sweat, old rope, fear trapped too long. Then he noticed the shape in the far corner. Not hidden, not arranged, just left there like refuse. At first he thought it was cloth. Then he saw bare foot. Hank didn't rush. Each step sounded louder than it should have. The barn listened. He knelt and touched her shoulder. Her skin was cold, like she'd been out all night. Then she stirred, barely, life hanging by a frayed thread. Hank's knife flashed once in the dim. He cut the rope quick, because he knew what rope does to flesh. He drew back the blanket. Her wrists were raw, like hide rubbed too long. Sadie Rowe lay bruised, burned by sun. Dirt streaked across her face, lips split and bleeding. Her eyes fluttered open for half a breath. Green, glassy, terrified. She tried to speak. Nothing came. Hank soaked a cloth with water from his canteen and pressed it to her brow. Her breathing hitched. "You're safe," he said. He didn't know if it was true yet. She slipped under again. Hank stayed there a long while, listening to her uneven breathing, afraid it would stop if he turned away. The barn was quiet again, but it was a different quiet now, the kind that demanded an answer. He carried her outside and laid her on a cot beneath open sky. He wrapped her in the only clean blanket he had. He sat beside her with a shotgun across his knees, not from fear, but because he understood something simple. Whoever did this hadn't finished. That night, Sadie dreamed of boots again. She flinched in her sleep. Hank didn't touch her. He kept the lamp lit. Morning crept in. Sadie woke to bitter coffee and whined dry grass. Her body screamed when she tried to rise. Hank was already there. He handed her the cup with both hands. She took it the same way. No words passed. They weren't needed. Her eyes told enough. The hollow stare of someone who'd seen how easily a life could be set aside. She finally whispered her name. "Sadie." Hank nodded once. She didn't say who'd done it, not yet. Later that day, Hank found tracks by the creek. Sadie never said it aloud, but she wouldn't look at the barn anymore. Even in daylight, she listened for creaking boards like sound itself could drag her back. 2 sets of boot prints. Fresh cigarette butts that weren't his. Ugh. He checked the rifle, loaded extra shells, hung a bell on the gate. Sadie watched from the porch, wrapped in a blanket, learning something important. She hadn't been left by accident. That barn had been chosen. What the rancher did to her in that barn was worse than anyone could imagine because it was meant to end quietly. As the sun slid behind the ridge, Hank stood looking over land he'd thought would save him. Sadie sat behind him, eyes locked on barn doors that no longer felt empty. Somewhere out there, the man who did this believed it was finished, believed no one would ask questions, believed Sadie Rowe would sink into dirt and silence. Hank Mercer knew better, and as the desert cooled and the bell at the gate waited, one question pressed heavier than the night air. When the man who left her comes back to be sure she stays quiet, who breaks first out here? Him or them? Morning arrived like it wasn't sure it belonged. Sadie Rowe woke to wind brushing dry grass and the soft groan of wood settling. Her body felt borrowed. Every movement reminded her she was alive and unsure why. She tried to sit. Pain answered before Hank did. He was already there, sitting on a crate near the porch, coffee steaming in a chipped tin cup. "Don't push it," he said. Not kind, not cold, honest. Sadie nodded. Speaking cost too much. She cradled the coffee when he handed it over. Strong, bitter, meant to keep a person upright. Her shoulders lowered a fraction. She was still weak, but warmth and clean air can pull someone back from the edge. Hank noticed that first. Not the bruises, not how she avoided the barn, but that small release, like her body believed it had somewhere to rest. They didn't talk much that morning. That was fine. There's a silence only broken people understand. It doesn't demand answers. It doesn't hurry. Sadie watched Hank move around the yard, fixing a loose board, checking fence, feeding the horse. He didn't hover. He didn't stare. He treated her like a person, not a problem. By noon, she asked if she could stand. Hank looked once, then nodded. She took 3 careful steps, then 4. Her legs shook, but they held. "That's enough," he said, and she listened. That afternoon, Hank walked the property again, slower, careful. The tracks by the creek still gnawed at him. 2 sets of boots, heavy recent. He pressed his fingers into the dirt. Someone had lingered. Someone confident. Someone confident. That kind of confidence doesn't come from passing through. It comes from a man who thinks he still owns something. When Hank returned, Sadie sat on the porch, staring at open land like she was memorizing it. "You remember anything?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "His name was Cal Turner," she said. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. "We were married once. Long time ago. He left, took the land, took everything that mattered." She swallowed. "Me came back with 2 men. Said the deed was still his. Kept talking about some old land grant like paper made him king. Said the law was on his side and I was just another item on the list." Hank's jaw tightened. "They tied me up in that barn," she said, like she was talking about weather. Like I was something to come back for. She met Hank's eyes, steady and tired. "I didn't think anyone would find me." Hank nodded once, not pity, understanding. That night, he set a second shotgun by the door. He sharpened the knife he hadn't touched since the war. He tightened the bell on the gate. Sadie watched him do it. She didn't ask why. Fear teaches you how to read preparation. The next day settled into a strange rhythm. Sadie walked a little farther each morning, helped with the horse, carried light buckets from the well. Hank guided her without hovering. He didn't tell her to rest every hour. He knew better. By the 5th day, she stood without shaking. By the 6th, she laughed once, short and dry, when Hank burned the beans. He smiled. Almost. That evening, Hank spotted cigarette butts near the fence, fresh. He didn't show Sadie, but she saw his eyes track the hills. "He's close, isn't he?" she asked. "I think he never left," Hank said. Sadie nodded. The next morning, she surprised him. "Teach me to shoot." Hank studied her. Fear was there, but so was resolve. He didn't answer. He fetched a worn rifle and shells, lined cans along the fence. "Slow," he said. Her first shot missed wide. The next 2 were closer. She laughed under her breath. By the 7th, the can jumped clean off. Hank nodded. "That'll do." Sadie didn't smile, but her eyes had changed. That night, they sat by the fire, beans overcooked, stars spread wide. Sadie spoke more, about how the town looked away, how Cal always knew who would stay quiet. "If he comes back," she said, "I won't be tied again." Hank stirred the fire. "Huh. Good," he said. The next morning, the bell rang once, soft. Hank didn't move. Neither did Sadie. They looked at each other, knowing this moment had been walking toward them since the barn door opened. Beyond the fence, dust lifted slow. Hank picked up the rifle. Sadie stood beside him. As hooves crept closer, one thought pressed into Hank's chest. When Cal Turner steps onto this land again, is Sadie ready to face the man who thought the barn was the end of her story? The bell rang again near sunset. Not loud, not rushed, just enough. Hank stood on the porch with the rifle against his leg, watching dust roll in. Sadie Rose stood a step behind, jacket too big, hands steady. 3 riders appeared. 2 hung back. One rode ahead like he owned it. Hank didn't need a name. Cal Turner rode like a man who'd never heard no. He was heavier than Sadie remembered. Older. That smile hadn't changed. Hank stepped off the porch and planted his boots. Not hostile, not polite, present. I didn't think anyone was home, Cal called. Hank took his time. You're on my land, he said. Cal laughed, short and dismissive. A paper decides land, Cal said. Sadie's chest tightened. Hank nodded. A paper burns. The men behind Cal shifted. One spat. The other glanced toward the barn. Sadie saw it. They knew. Cal's eyes slid to her. Well, I'll be damned, he said. I'm tougher than you look. Sadie stepped forward before Hank could stop her. You left me, she said. I didn't even check. Cal shrugged. I didn't need to. Something settled in Hank. Certainty. One of Cal's men reached for his gun, careless. Hank fired first. The crack split the air. The man fell and stayed down. Sadie raised the rifle Hank had given her. Her hands were steady. Her stomach wasn't. She fired. The man yelped and dropped, clawing dirt. Cal dove for cover. Shots wild, chewing fence posts and earth. Hank moved steady. Sadie circled wide like she'd been shown. Cal ran. He always did. Sadie tackled him near the barn door. The same door. They hit hard. He grabbed at her jacket, her hair. You think this changes anything? He snarled. It already has, she said. Hank was there, hauled Cal up by the collar. Cal's eyes flicked to the barn, unsure. You left her to disappear, Hank said. That was your mistake. Cal begged then, blamed everyone else. Hank listened. They didn't kill Cal Turner. They did something worse. They stripped the lie. Cal was tied to a mule with a sign that told the truth plain. I left a woman to die in the barn. The town watched him pass slow enough to be seen. No laughter, no looking away. When it was done, the ranch went quiet again. But this quiet didn't crawl. Sadie sat on the porch later with burned tea and smiled anyway. I guess we're even, she said. Hank chuckled. Not close. Days passed, fences mended. Barn doors stayed open. Sadie still had nights. Hank still woke early. Healing didn't arrive all at once. One evening, Sadie asked, do places remember? Hank thought of war and wood and loss. People do, he said. That's enough. Later that week, a note was nailed to the gate. Old paper. Red paint. I'm coming back for what's mine. Sadie read it without blinking. Not Cal's writing, she said. Hank folded it into his coat. Someone older, he said. The wind rose. The land stilled. Hank knew the ranch wasn't done testing them. The note stayed in his pocket 2 days. Not forgotten. Avoided. Sadie noticed anyway. She noticed everything now. On the third morning, a letter appeared, stuck in the fence like it belonged. Plain envelope. Hank held it a long time. Sadie baked biscuits inside, the smell almost normal. Almost. He opened it and read 4 words. I remember Tombstone. Hank's mouth dry. He folded it and slid it beside the other note. He stood in the yard listening for something that wasn't wind. Sadie stepped out, wiping her hands. You get mail? Not the kind you want? She narrowed her eyes. Whose are? Hank met her gaze. Old mistake. He worked harder that afternoon. Fixed nothing. Moved tools. Anything. Night came. He left the porch dark. Sadie brought tea anyway. You don't have to tell me, she said, but don't shut me out. Hank stared into dark land. I rode with men I shouldn't have, he said. Before the war, Tombstone gets into you. There was a man. Roar. He led a crew. We weren't heroes, Hank said. We thought the world owed us. Sadie's fingers tightened. Did you hurt someone? Hank spoke like stepping on ice. I didn't pull the trigger. I didn't stop it. Wind moved. A coyote called, then quiet. Aurora found you, Sadie said. Hank nodded. If he found me, he found what matters. Sadie glanced toward the barn, then back. So he's not here for land. Hank shook his head. He wants the story. The next morning, Hank saddled before sunrise. Sadie watched. Don't be stupid, she said. Hank smiled thin. He rode toward the ridge where wind changed first. Halfway, he saw a small fire. Controlled, waiting. He dismounted and walked in. A voice came calm. The same boots, Mercer? Roar stepped into light. Older, grinned familiar. I'm tired of you. Roar chuckled. I'm not here to shoot, here to remind. He spoke of Tombstone, of what Hank let happen. He glanced toward the ranch. A nice place, that girl's a fresh start. Hank felt the threat. I'm not that man, he said. Roar laughed. I am. Hank could have ended it. He didn't. He stepped back. I'm going home. Roar's smile flickered. This ain't over. Hank rode hard. Sadie waited. He's real, Hank said. And he knows about you. Sadie's eyes sharpened. Then tell me, she said. What did you do in Tombstone that brings him to my bar? The ranch felt altered after Hank spoke the truth. Not heavier, sharper, like air before a storm that's done pretending it might pass. Sadie didn't press him for Tombstone right away. She didn't need every detail yet. She could hear it in the way his voice carried, the way old wood creaks when weight settles where it always feared it might. That night, sleep came in pieces. Hank stayed on the porch with the lamp turned low. Sadie remained inside at the table, cleaning the rifle slow and deliberate, each motion careful, learned, chosen. They weren't hiding. They were getting ready. Morning arrived clean and bright, the kind of morning that lies. Hank poured coffee and slid a cup across the table. "You don't have to stay," he said. "You could go into town. Catch a train east." Sadie looked at him like he'd suggested she forget her own name. "I already ran once," she said. "I'm done." Hank nodded. He'd hoped for that answer. He'd feared it too. They spent the day doing ordinary work on purpose. Fixed a fence post that leaned. Mended a hinge that squealed. Fed the horse twice. Normal work steadies hands. Around noon, Hank finally spoke about Tombstone. Not all of it. Just enough. A robbery that went wrong. Fire where fire shouldn't have been. Shots fired. A kid caught where he shouldn't have stood. A woman trapped when the street burned like it held a grudge. "I didn't pull the trigger," Hank said again. "But I watched." Sadie went still. "I know that feeling," she said quietly. That was all. By late afternoon, the horse grew restless again. Ears twitching. Then Hank saw dust. One rider. Not Cal. Not Roar. A stranger. The man stopped at the gate and tipped his hat polite. "Evening." Hank stepped forward, rifle resting easy. "That depends," he said. The man glanced past him toward the house, toward Sadie, then back. "Just passing word," he said. "Words of that. Some folks are asking about this place." Hank's eyes narrowed. "What folks?" The man shrugged. "A men who don't like loose ends." He turned and rode off. Sadie exhaled. "So it starts us," she said. "It already did," Hank replied. That night, Sadie couldn't sleep. Not from fear, from thinking. She stepped onto the porch where Hank sharpened a blade. "Do you ever think about leaving again?" she asked. Hank didn't look up. Every man does, and every man decides when leaving costs more than staying. Sadie sat beside him. "Then we stay." Hank finally met her eyes and nodded. The next morning brought trouble with a different face. The sheriff rode in just after breakfast, hat low, eyes tired. "I heard about Cal," he said. Hank didn't deny it. "Some folks think you went too far." Sadie stepped forward before Hank spoke. "Some folks think wrong." The sheriff studied her side. "The record," he said. A man like Roar asking questions means this won't end clean." Hank nodded. "I'm counting on that." The sheriff left without writing a thing. That evening, Hank set lanterns just right. Not bright. Not hidden. Sadie noticed a crow landing on the same fence post, watching, then flying off fast like it got a signal. They sat together as the sun dropped. "You scared?" Hank asked. Sadie thought. "Not like before," she said. "Before I didn't know if anyone would come. Now I know who's standing next to me." Hank smiled. Real. Darkness settled. Boots sounded slow across dirt. Hank stood. Sadie stood with him. A voice came calm. "It was Evening Mercer." Roar stepped in the light alone, hands open, grin easy. "No guns tonight. Just talk." "You like talks that end your way," Hank said. "I like endings," Roar replied. He looked at Sadie. "You must be the reason he grew a spine." "I'm the reason he remembers who he is." The grin slipped. "Sleep light," Roar said. "And tomorrow gets interesting." Then he was gone. The ranch went quiet again. Too quiet. "You're testing us," Hank said. Sadie nodded. "Then tomorrow we stop being tested." Morning came without asking permission. Pale sky, honest light. Hank stood on the porch before sunrise, coffee untouched. Sadie joined him. No greetings. Some mornings don't allow it. Sadie nodded. "Real?" He rode to the ridge where wind shifted first. Roar waited there, leaning on stone. "It took you long enough." Hank dismounted. "No weapons raised. You came for an ending," Hank said. "I came for the truth," Roar replied. Hank told him. About war, about Maggie, about smoke and guilt. About smoke and guilt. About Tombstone and the day he did nothing. Roar listened, smile fading. "I won't run," Hank said. "I won't pretend. I won't give you that power." Roar stepped closer. Saying it doesn't fix it." "I know," Hank said. "Choosing who I am now does." Wind passed between them. The desert leaned in. Roar looked toward the ranch, toward Sadie standing firm. You've got something to lose. That's the point. Roar searched Hank's face for the man who flinched. He didn't find him. Finally, Roar stepped back. Walking away doesn't erase the past, but it stops at owning tomorrow. Roar turned and left. No shot followed. Hank rode back as the sun climbed. Sadie waited. It's done, he said. She smiled, not loud, real. Life didn't turn clean. Some mornings stayed heavy. Some nights replayed old choices. Healing is slow. Sadie still woke to pieces of the barn. Hank still checked fences early, but the ranch shifted. It wasn't a hiding place anymore. It was a place to live. They planted a small garden, not from need, but commitment. Sadie learned the land. Hank learned how to listen. One evening, sky soft and gold, Sadie asked, "You ever think you're too old to start again?" Hank smiled. Starting again is just living with more scars. She laughed, real, and that sound healed more than rain. If you're still listening, maybe something here sounds familiar. Maybe you've carried guilt too long. Maybe you stayed quiet when you should have stood. Hank didn't fix yesterday. He faced it. Sadie didn't erase what was done. She refused to let it decide her ending. Sometimes that's the only justice that lasts. Let me ask you something simple. What day would you change? And what would it cost to stop running? If you had one clean morning, would you take it? You can't rewrite yesterday, but you can choose who you are when you wake tomorrow. And sometimes that choice is the first real freedom you've had. The quiet after Roar left didn't feel earned. It felt borrowed, like calm water stretched thin over something sharp beneath. Hank Mercer didn't say much the rest of that day. Neither did Sadie Rowe. Words had done enough damage for one lifetime. They moved through the ranch with purpose, not panic. Hank checked the fence line again, slower this time, eyes scanning dirt the way a man reads a page he's memorized but doesn't trust. Sadie swept the porch, not because it needed it, but because movement kept the mind from wandering into places it shouldn't stay too long. The barn door stayed open. Sunlight filled the space that had once swallowed her. She didn't step inside, but she didn't turn away either. That was new. That night, the wind carried sound farther than usual. Coyotes called once, then stopped, like they'd sensed something listening back. Hank sat on the porch with the rifle across his knees. Sadie sat near the door, wrapped in a blanket, hands folded, eyes on the dark. Neither slept much. Morning came thin and gray. Hank brewed coffee, burned it a little. Sadie drank it anyway. You still sure? Hank asked quietly. She didn't ask what he meant. I'm not done choosing, she said. That was answer enough. The town took notice before noon. A wagon passed slower than it needed to. A rider stopped at the fence and pretended to fix a strap. News traveled faster than truth out here, but it traveled all the same. Cal Turner's ride through town had unsettled people. It had forced faces to turn forward instead of away. That kind of thing never sits easy. By afternoon, Hank spotted dust again. This time, 2 riders. Not careless. Not rushed. They stopped well short of the gate. One dismounted. We're looking for a man named Hank Mercer, he called. Hank stepped forward. You found him. The man nodded. Some folks think you owe answers. Hank didn't raise his voice. Those folks can come ask themselves. The rider smiled thin, mounted up, and left. Sadie watched from the porch. They're counting how you breathe, she said. Hank nodded. Let them count. That night, Sadie dreamed again. Not of boots this time. Of firelight and voices that stopped when she listened. She woke before dawn and stepped outside. Hank was already there. You okay? He asked. She nodded. I am now. On the 3rd day after Roar's visit, the sheriff returned. He didn't dismount right away. You've made some noise, he said. Hank leaned against the post. I didn't mean to, the sheriff snorted. No one ever does. He glanced at Sadie. The town's divided. It always is, Hank said. The sheriff sighed. Roar's name scares people. It should, Hank replied. The sheriff tipped his hat and rode off again. No warnings, no promises. That afternoon, Hank taught Sadie how to clean the shotgun. Not rushed, not patronizing, just hands and metal and care. A fear makes people sloppy, he said. The preparation keeps them alive. Sadie nodded. She'd learned it the hard way. The sun dropped heavy and red that evening. The crow returned to the fence post, watching. Then it lifted and vanished toward the ridge. Hank noticed. He didn't comment. Just tightened the lantern wick and set it where it could be seen, but not from far off. You ever think about what happens if he doesn't leave? Sadie asked. Hank answered honestly. Every hour. She considered that. Then we keep living anyway, she said. Hank smiled faintly. The next morning brought rain, rare, light, and brief. The land soaked it in like it was afraid it wouldn't come back. Sadie stood on the porch, face lifted, letting drops hit her skin. "It feels like permission," she said. Hank watched her. He thought of Maggie then, of how she used to stand just like that. The thought didn't crush him the way it once had. It sat there, quiet. Later that day, a boy from town rode up hard, too young to hide fear. "There's talk," he said. "A men meeting at the saloon." Hank nodded. "A go home," he told the boy. "A stay there." The boy hesitated, looked at Sadie, then nodded and rode off. Night fell early. Clouds held the last light tight. Hank and Sadie sat at the table, eating beans that tasted like nothing. "If it comes to it," Hank said slowly, "you don't have to." Don't," Sadie said, not angry. "Certain." Hank stopped. Outside, a branch snapped. Both of them went still. Then another sound. A boot. "Careful." Hank rose. Sadie did too. The lantern cast long shadows. A voice came from the dark. Not Roar's. Younger, nervous. "Just passing through," the voice said. Hank didn't answer. Silence stretched. Then retreating footsteps. Sadie exhaled. "A testing," she said. Hank nodded. They always test first. Morning came tense. Hank saddled the horse but didn't ride out. He walked the perimeter instead. Found tracks where none should be. A place by the creek where someone had stood and watched the house. Sadie joined him there. "He's measuring time," she said. Hank agreed. That afternoon, Hank finally told her more about Tombstone. Not every detail, just the part that mattered. The woman's name had been Eliza. She hadn't done anything wrong. Sadie listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "You stayed." Hank looked at her. "You didn't run," she continued. "You stayed long enough to carry it." Hank swallowed. "That doesn't make it right." No," Sadie said, "but it makes you honest." That night, a single shot rang out far from the house. Not aimed, not close. A message. Hank didn't flinch, neither did Sadie. They sat together until the sound faded into the hills. "Tomorrow," Hank said. Sadie nodded. Tomorrow. Morning didn't wait for permission. It arrived hard and pale, stripping shadows from the land and leaving nowhere to hide. Hank woke before the rooster, already dressed, boots laced tight. Sadie was awake too. She always was lately. They shared a look that didn't need words, though. Outside, the air felt thinner. Foot stretched too far overnight. Hank stepped down from the porch and froze. The fence gate stood open. Not broken, not forced. Opened by someone who knew how not to leave a mark. Sadie came up behind him. "They want you to see it," she said. Hank nodded and closed the gate again, slow and deliberate, erasing nothing. By mid-morning, riders appeared on the ridge. 4 this time. They didn't descend. They watched. Hank didn't wave, didn't challenge. He went back to work, fixed a loose board, sharpened a blade. The riders stayed until noon, then vanished. Sadie noticed how her hands didn't shake anymore. That scared her more than fear ever had. Around midday, the crow returned, circling low before settling near the barn. It cawed once, then twice. Hank glanced up. "That's not good," he said quietly. Sadie followed his gaze. "It's warning," she replied. In the afternoon, the sheriff came back, this time with another man. Not a deputy. A businessman by the cut of his coat. "This here is Mr. Collins," the sheriff said. "He speaks for certain interests." Collins smiled like he practiced it. "No one wants trouble," he said. Hank leaned against the post. "Then they picked the wrong place." Collins' smile tightened. "The people say you're harboring something that doesn't belong to you." Hank's eyes didn't move. "The people say a lot." Collins glanced at Sadie. "Some debts don't vanish just because someone wishes they would." Sadie met his stare. "Neither do consequences." Collins laughed softly. A bold. He tipped his hat and left with the sheriff. The silence afterward felt heavier than gunfire. That night, Hank checked the rifle twice. Sadie sat by the window, shotgun across her lap, not dramatic, not defiant, just ready. When sleep came, it came in pieces. Somewhere past midnight, the horse snorted. Hank was on his feet before the sound finished. Shadows moved near the tree line. Hank raised the lantern just enough to show he was awake. A figure stepped forward, then another. Roar emerged last, slow and smiling. "Evening," he called. Hank stood firm. "For late." Roar chuckled. "You still think time's yours?" He looked at Sadie. "You look steadier." "You look steadier." "Yam," she said. Roar nodded approvingly. "That's good. Makes this cleaner." Hank shifted slightly, placing himself between them. "You're done here," he said. Roar's smile faded. No," he replied. "I'm deciding." The men behind him spread a little wider. Not close enough yet. Roar lifted a hand. I don't want blood, he said, but I will take what's owed. Hank didn't blink. You already took enough. Roar's eyes hardened. That's not how debts work. Sadie stepped forward. It ends tonight, she said. Roar laughed once, sharp. It ends when I say. Hank moved then, not fast, certain. The rifle came up. The sound shattered the night. One man went down screaming. The others scattered, firing wild. Sadie fired once. Clean. The crow burst into the air. Roar dove behind the tree line, cursing. Silence returned in broken gasps. Hank stood still until he was sure. Sadie's hands trembled now. Hank reached her. It's over, he said, though neither of them fully believed it. Dawn found blood on the dirt and no bodies left behind. A promise, not a victory. The sheriff arrived late, face pale. He didn't ask questions, just looked at the tracks leading away. This changes things, he said. Hank nodded. It already did. By evening, the ridge was empty. No riders, no watchers, just wind and dust and a ranch that had chosen a side. Sadie stood on the porch as the sun fell. Hank joined her. You regret it? He asked. She shook her head. No, she paused. Oh, do you? Hank looked at the land, at the barn, at her. Not anymore. The night came quiet this time, earned at last.